Hi there, I'm Chuck Miley. I'm with the Book Arts Roundtable exhibition here at the George Segal Gallery of Montclair State University. Today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about pop-up books. Pop-up books are magical with both adults and children, and the commercial ones you see on the market are usually made up of about 5 standard procedures. I'm going to show you one today. It's called the freestanding centerfold. And it's the one that you open the page and it explodes into the space you're in. First, I'd like to show you a few examples of it from prior books that I've made. This is from an interpretation of the Firebird. And as you can see, the elements are standing here and back here. The others are tied into them. But the one in the center and the one in the back here are the examples of the freestanding centerfold. Another example from the arts and cultures of Bali is a specific dance of the barang. And as you can see, the barang himself and the object in the back are freestanding. The others are bridged into them so that they're pulled up at the same time. From the Aesop's Fables interpretation, there's the tortoise and the hare. And as you can see, both elements, the one in the front with the tortoise and with the tortoise and the hare here in the back, are both versions of that freestanding. And finally, an example from quotations from our favorite horror movies. We have The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And in the back, the freestanding Cathedral of Notre Dame is the freestanding centerfold. Esmeralda at the fountain, of course, is bridged into it, and Quasimodo is sliding down to save her. But the freestanding centerfold, as you can see, you open the book and it pops up. The way that it does this is the energy or the torque that the act of opening the page causes the element or the image to rise. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that today and how that works. In order for the pop-up to work, as I said, you have to have a page, and in actuality it's 2 pages, and a technical aspect, and the reason it works, is this center where the 2 pages come together is called the gutter. And in the gutter, the freestanding element, I'm going to show you just maquettes here, and then we'll get to the fun stuff, have to cross that centerfold. They can't be off to the side and they can't be straight across. In order to use that energy of the opening and the closing of the page, they have to be attached to both pages, and they have to be at approximately 45-degree angle to the centerfold. If they're straight across, it doesn't work, because then when you close the page, you crush everything there and it won't pop back up, or if it pops back up, it's crushed paper. So that's basically how it works. You can see here the red line on the paper, how that's usually at about a 45 degree. It doesn't have to be exactly 45 degrees. It can be greater or it can be less, depending on the element that you're working with. In order for it to work, the freestanding centerfold element, or the image in the center, has to be able to bend. There has to be a fold or a score in the center in order to allow it to open and shut. It becomes a page in itself, not unlike the first one. And it also has to have what we call a foot, which are a tiny tab at the bottom that can be attached to the page. In order to do this, what we're going to do is take our elements here. Here we have our freestanding, or our page, that's going to hold the freestanding. And parts in the elements. Here's the image, the walrus and the carpenter walking on the shore, before it's cut out. Once it's cut out, and the walrus here is glued to the page in order to be able to allow his foot to stand out. Now actually, I could do this where his foot was cut from the page. Here are the 2 feet at the bottom. And when they're scored, normally what I do is I use an X-Acto knife. What this does is this breaks down or weakens the fibers that make the paper, that construct the paper. You can also use a bone folder, which is a tool that looks, originally was made of bone, now out of plastic, which is used in bookmaking. So what would happen is that I would have to have a foot, and instead of it being straight across, it's at a slight angle, so that if it's 1/4 of an inch here, it becomes 1/2 of an inch here. The reason for this is that when it stands up, that little difference between the 1/4 of the inch front and back allows it to stand and lean backwards slightly. If it didn't do that, then it would tip forward and be more difficult for you to see in the book. So this sort of adjusts for that to happen. What I would do then is I'll take my page, and I've already reworked on the page the angle. This is the angle that the elements, or the freestanding element, will be. So I've made a mark here as a guide for myself. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bit of glue. I could use a glue stick. I often have used a glue stick. Or I can use a bit of glue here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this shut, because this is the magic. You don't have to be, you know, a brain surgeon in order to work this out. I've cut a tiny notch, you can see at the center. And the reason for that is that's got to go across the thing. If it were straight across, then it would bind up and there wouldn't be room for it to work. So I'm going to very carefully lay this down so that the edge of that notch lies right on the centerfold. And then I can bring the foot back exactly the way I want. The other thing I have to watch is that my element doesn't go off of the page. I need a little bit of a space, and it's always good to give yourself a little more than you expect, because mistakes can be made and it's easier to try to solve them before they happen. Okay, so I've got this down and ready to go. I'm now very carefully, and I want to put a piece of paper here to protect the background so that I don't get glue on it. I'm going to put a bit of glue on the foot here, a bit more than I planned. And now very simply, it's going to actually position itself. As I close it and rub it, it's already in position. I don't have to figure anything out. The important thing is positioning it the first time so that that notch is on the center of the page and that the foot goes off at that angle, usually about a 40, well, as I said before, about a 45-degree angle. And then what happens if I've done everything right, I'll open this and it'll pop up. If I haven't, I'm going to be embarrassed. And there we are. I'm going to hold this down until the glue takes, but you can see how the centerfold pops up. Now I can add other elements to it, and I'm going to do that with this particular pop-up. I have a background for them, just a very, very simple background. And I'm going to put this off to the side and allow the glue to set. And in the meanwhile, I talked a little bit about, if you can see, there's a dotted line where I've worked in 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 of an inch. I'm going to go ahead and cut the notch from that centerfold out on both sides. And I'm going to trim the corner just to make it a little neater. There is a dotted line you can see where I'm going to connect that edge of that, the apex of that notch with the edge of the trim at the edge there. Very carefully, and I have to be careful with the X-Acto knife. I don't want to press too hard or pull too many times, or I'm going to have to rely on tape. So what I'll do is I'll let the weight of the knife just draw slowly, and what that's going to do is that's going to weaken the fibers of the paper so that I will then be able to very simply get a nice clean cut like that. If I need, I could then take my bone folder and give it a good rub. So there we have a good foot. Let's do that on the other side. Once again, from the center notch to the outside edge, and gently, and give that a good fold there. And there we have a freestanding there. So now it's time to assemble. Let's put our pieces together here. Let's bring this back. How's our glue doing? Oh, how about that? The glue didn't work. Let's give it a little bit more here. Once again, give it a close. And while I'm going to wait for that, I'm going to go ahead and pre-glue this, because I'm going to do it the same as I did the first one. So I'll put glue on this part of the foot. I'm going to position this. I should turn it this way so you can see. I'm going to position this, once again, the tip of the notch is going to go to the center fold, and this is going to go out from there with the glue, and I need to check to make sure that's not going to go off the page, which it's not. And then once again, let's put glue on this one. And close it. Usually in a pop-up book, the person that works out how the pop-up's going to work is called a paper engineer. In most pop-up books, the artist works with the writer. Sometimes they're one and the same, and sometimes the artist is also the paper engineer or the designer of the pop-up book. Okay, hopefully that'll hold. Let's see if our glue has done what glue does. And it did. And then there's our final pop-up element. Now this would be one page in the book, and is from the examples that I've shown you, they can be bound together. Usually the edge of it is glued to the page before it, so that the pages aren't really connected together. They're done in what is called an accordion fold, and as with the movements in the edge of the accordion, the book is structured that way so that it allows the thickness of the papers to move without binding up. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of explanation of how the wonder and magic happen in pop-up books. It's not that difficult. I mean, anyone can do it. I don't know if I haven't had a chance to look around, so I don't know if there are pop-up books in the show today when you're looking around for it. I didn't put it in a pop-up book. You'll find my books are made of metal, but they use some of the same movement elements and ideas that you might find in a pop-up book. I thank you for your attention. I hope this has been instructive, and I hope you enjoy the show. And my thanks to the staff of the gallery for making this possible. So thank you very much.